Cathal Summers.
And I'm Deirdre Glenn,
your Teagasc Sustainability Advisors. And you're welcome to the Teagasc Environment Edge podcast number 48, bringing you the latest information, science and opinion to improve farm sustainability. With huge pressure on farmers to increase efforts to reduce emissions by 2030, what is the one action a farmer can start doing this year without any additional effort that will not only contribute towards reducing gaseous emissions, but also save money on the farm? Donegal Signpost Programme dairy farmer Richard Starrett and his Teagasc advisor Conor Maguire joins us to discuss his experience of using Protected Urea for the last 4 years. Richard, Conor, you're very welcome to the show.
Thanks, Cathal.
Thanks, Cal.
Yeah, look, Richard, especially you. I know we're in the middle. We're towards the end of January now, and calving season's coming hot and heavy. So, thanks a million for taking the time out. I know it's difficult this time of year. You're in for the next couple of months. Are going to be pretty full on for you. But I suppose, Richard, can you tell me a little about the farm, where you're farming, and what type of farming you're doing?
I'm just farming outside Lifford here in Donegal. We're spring calving high EBA herd. We milk around 160 cows. Probably a good high sows, like we're around protein, 3.9 protein and 4.35 fat. Try to get the cows out the grass as soon as we can in the spring, and maybe to finish grazing maybe with the middle of November each year. It all depends on weather and whether we're out for 2 hours or all day, etc.
How soon do you normally get out in the spring, Richard? What's the grass growth like up there, or how?
Grass growth will be fairly low now.
Is that
February and March would usually be in single figures. We'll try to get out usually from the middle of February on if the ground conditions and weather's right.
And what would you class your farm as? Would it be a free drain farm or a kind of a heavyish farm? Or?
That would be a mixture. We have our dry fields and our wetter fields and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The farm runs from sea level to 600 feet, so it's not just, there's nothing flat about it.
You're high enough in areas. The cows have to do a bit of work walking up and down then.
Yeah.
What's you probably, I know you've done a lot in the farm the last few years. What's your soil fertility like in the farm at the moment?
Soil fertility is fairly good. There's a lot of index 3s and 4s, and the pH is around the mid 6.5.
You're optimum across the farm anyway.
Yeah. Teagasc soil tested, seen him in the Signpost Programme. I was asked to join it in 2021 by Frank Kelly, who used to be in the programme, and I accepted. And Teagasc soil tested my farm this time last year, and all indexes came back, and then Conor got me a map then, coloured map for one for pH and one for P and one for K, and it gave me a fair idea by looking at this map, laminated and all, always where I needed to concentrate my slurry and stuff on for keeping my indexes right and my lime, etc.
I love those maps. I think they're great when you're in the office or sitting in the tractor where to target that slurry, which we know now it's so valuable, and the fertility. You mentioned just on grass growth and that, Richard. Do you measure grass or anything like that?
Yeah, grass is measured in pasture base.
Yeah. What type of tons are you growing across the farm? Or?
Usually around 14 tons of dry matter per hectare grown each year.
Yeah, impressive. Yeah, you're growing a good bit of grass.
Yeah.
Just Richard, you mentioned Signpost there as well, the program. How did you get involved in that, or where did that come from, or did you have an interest in sustainability, or kind of looking at reducing gaseous emissions, or where did that all come about?
I suppose like the high EBA herd, like, and we're looking to have something that'll get plenty of milk solids, like with less meal, etc. And that's why Frank Kelly asked me back in 2021 would I be interested up this way to join the programme. I said, that's okay, I'll try it. I know to see how it goes. So we had plenty of help there over the year. We had a good advisor there for a while there, Shane O'Hanlon. He has just moved on to that area advisor since.
Yeah, and you're obviously not afraid to try new things anyway, because I know your EBI is very impressive as well, and you've been working hard on it.
Yeah, oh yeah. No, it's a thing you have to sit and spend a few hours in the office every year picking bulls, etc. Because we just had a meeting on one of our discussion group members' farms last year. It was a breeding meeting, and over the average, if his price was compared to the average price in Arrivo Co-op this last 5 years, it was 100,000 euro better off. So that meant picking his bulls right, it was 20,000 a year better off. So 2 hours in the office, 10,000 euros an hour for having the right bulls.
It is a good payment, I take it.
Yeah.
What is your EBI sitting at now, Richard?
221.
You're in the top percentages of the country. It's area at that.
Top 1%, yeah.
And sometimes we forget about sustainability. It's not just about putting all these measures in place, but it's also about, it's about trying to maintain profit while protecting the environment as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that sure is, yeah.
We talked about a few measures already, but today I really want to discuss protected urea with you. Can you tell me when you got into protected urea and maybe what made you take the jump?
Teagasc started to talk about protected urea back in 2018 and all, and I said I would try it, but it wasn't really available at that time. But 2019 came then, and the co-op started to get some of it in, so we tried using it at that stage, and we didn't see any problem with it. And even in the summertime when the ground conditions got drier and all, it worked okay. Then since that, then we're gonna use it far more, no problems at all, because when you can get it with sulfur on and sulfur or without sulfur, 46% nitrogen, it's a 1-1. And even when you go to sow fertilizer, if you put even 375 kilos or whatever into the sower, it goes a long way with the strength of it.
Yeah, and I suppose Teagasc has been pushing Protected Urea for a couple of years now. What was it? Did you hear the discussion group? Was your advisor one-to-one that gave it a little push? I suppose there's a certain percentage of farmers using it, and there's a lot more that would like to use it. But what was it that made a difference for you to use it?
Just for there's a lot of lower emissions than 78% lower emissions than ordinary urea, ammonia, and 71% lower nitrous oxide than CAN. So
it's a no-brainer to protect the industry.
Yeah.
I suppose Conor, just touching on Richard has mentioned it now. But why people are wondering why has Teagasc put such a big push on protected urea over the last couple of years?
It's all kind of fallen down to these targets that the government have set us to achieve, like a 51% overall reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And I suppose we all have to play our part on achieving these targets. And I suppose look, the protected ureas we're chatting about here today is especially on dairy farms, if we could get a high percentage of dairy farmers to switch to using 100% protected urea and kind of move away from the cans, there's a big potential there to reduce emissions by 78% on every farm, just by switching from can to protected urea.
Yeah, and look, we are under pressure to reduce emissions by 2030. And I suppose, look, protected urea is not the silver bullet in the one, but it does contribute significantly. Well, I suppose, Conor, the thing I like about it is, if a farmer wakes up tomorrow morning and says, right, I'm going to change from can or urea to protected urea this year, it's not a big deal to switch. It's not like they have to build something. It's something they can do instantly.
Richard, you would have seen that too, as there probably was always this factor around it that it's hard got. It's me co-op doesn't stock it, and the shelf life of the inhibitor, they won't stock it because they're short shelf lives. And as Richard will tell you as well, I suppose if you don't speak up and order it through your co-ops in time, it can be got. There's no problem getting it. Just you need to speak up or order it in time. And
very important, Conor. It doesn't take them very long to get it on. If you just say you want it or what you want.
And look, I suppose a lot of the shelf life of the inhibitor, a lot of the fertilizer companies in the country now, they're giving a 12 months shelf life on them NBT inhibitors.
Yeah, that was one of the main questions that you saw always come up, how there was always a worry about shelf life, but 12 months is a long shelf life, and I think even, Conor, at that, even after 12 months, it doesn't really reduce the impact of the product drastically at all. I think it's only 2 or 3%. I think, is it?
That's correct. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, Richard, that probably wasn't that shelf life thing. Once I suppose you heard about that, didn't really worry you a whole lot, I presume.
Well, at the beginning, it probably did a bit, because you didn't want to have fertilizer left in the middle of September if you had to keep it to the next year. You've actually paid a wee bit extra for it, and maybe the next year then it had lost its protection. But now I wouldn't have any problem with that, with some of that stuff's shelf life of up to 12 years, or 12 months, sorry. So one thing I will say about protected urea, you need to keep the cover on the sower all the time, because if you leave some fertilizer on the sower at night time, it will turn messy the next day. But we never have that problem. We don't try to empty out the sower or anything, because you're sowing nearly every few days anyway after the cows, little and often.
Richard, just I suppose back before you started using Protected Urea, what were you using instead of it?
We've been using a good bit of CAN and 18612 and 101020. 18612 and 101020 we used like to build indexes, and we never use any pasture sward or cut sward or anything like that there. Like.
Are you finished with CAN and urea? Then normally you don't use either of those products, and where everything is Protected Urea on your farm, bar the compounds.
Yeah.
And do you find any difference in the way you farmed compared to now, changing over to Protected Urea? Has it made it more difficult or easier? I suppose with Protected Urea you can't mix it with phosphorus. Has that been a problem on your farm?
Not really, because like it's not as if we're going out all the time to put any phosphorus out. Like we get a lot of ours now with the indexes being high out of our slurry, targeted to lower P&K fields. And other than that, if we had to top up fields or something, we'd go with 10-10-20 or 07-30 or something like that.
Oh, that's for the colour coded N&P maps come in handy, Richard. For even giving a contractor coming into the farm to spread slurry, you can pinpoint exactly and give the contractor a copy of the maps, and Richard knows where he can target that slurry and on them paddocks. And I suppose then too, Richard, like you've got slurry tested through the signpost as well, and
yeah, that is very good.
You suppose you found that beneficial too, like knowing exactly what nutrient content was in your slurry.
Yeah, you're saving money all the time there, because I always said as well, slurry, it was always seen as a waste product for such a long time, and the minute you get a test on that and it comes back to say 1,000 gallons of slurry is 9 units of nitrogen and 5 units of phosphorus and 35 units of potassium, now all of a sudden it becomes like a product like 18-12, Richard. So I'm sure you'd appreciate those tests, see the value in them.
That's right. What we are actually doing now, we are around to soil testing every year. I'm involved in the Grassland Agro Programme with Arrigo as well, and they soil test it every year as well. And like it just leaves you're on top of the game all the time. If any indexes start to go down, you're able to target those fields. If they were high last year and low this year, like you can target them and know where to put your slurry, or even if you have to buy 10-10-20 or something to put on them, or put on lime, or etc.
Conor, just on the I suppose just for any listeners wondering about, we mentioned the phosphorus not working well with Protected Urea. Can you just explain that about why there's an issue, or maybe how is it storage is the issue, I presume?
The phosphorus, basically, it's not stable. It breaks down in days, and it's like the pea breaks down and then inhibitor fairly quickly, so it does.
Yeah, so it's just in the bag that you can't store the phosphorus, but it's okay for K and sulfur, I think, as Richard said there a few minutes ago.
K and sulfur within the Protected Urea, that inhibitor, that's fairly stable with sulfur and K.
Yeah, and I think Richard, the way you said you're tackling it, and the way you're tackling it to me is the way to go. Is you're probably top loading your phosphorus between March and June anyway, so you can use your compounds like 18-6-12 and then use your Protected Urea straight then throughout the grazing season.
That's right, yeah. Some might put on actually muriate of potash maybe at the September time as well in some of the silage fields.
In the back end to top up, yeah.
To top up as needed, like.
You said something interesting there a second ago, Richard, and a few farmers said it to me as well, that when you're using Protected Urea and you're up in the high 40s% nitrogen compared to if you're using CAN, when you load up that spinner, it goes a long, long way that you don't have to start emptying it and filling it when you're following the cows.
That's right. It's nice that you're not running back to the yard all the time looking for top up.
That's the one job I hate, having to top up the spinner the whole time you have to do it.
You can sit on the tractor there and put on some of these podcasts and stuff and listen to them there if your phone's connected to your radio on the tractor. And
the Environment Edge podcast. Yeah. We get just someone to open the gaps for you, then you'll be right. You don't have to get out of the seat at all. Conor, tell us this. What would you say to farmers you would have a lot of farmers talking there for a while about spreading urea kind of in the first application nitrogen and then starting to use Protected Urea. Can you comment, I suppose, on the efficiency of using normal urea versus Protected Urea earlier on, and maybe the cost as well?
The big advantage of spreading that Protected Urea for farmers, on this part of the country, they can use it from early February until early September, and it will work as effectively as urea in the spring in the damp conditions, and due to that, the inhibitors it'll release the N slower and more efficiently than CAN in the summertime. So there is big benefits, and also probably biggest key driver, along with the environmental impact of protected urea, would be the cost. Like it's a cheaper product per unit value of nitrogen compared to standard urea and can.
And that does mean a lot to the farmer. I think we're saying if you spread urea and you get caught with the weather, it's something like you have to spread 10% more normal urea than protected urea to get the same value, which that's a massive saving to farmers if they stick to protected urea. Because I think for a few years we were kind of told that in the damp weather, like the damp mild weather, you get away with normal urea, but I think if the weather goes against you at all, there is huge loss of ammonia from that normal urea, which you could be caught out in production wise.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, the loss of it is a big one.
Richard, one I suppose practical one for you when you're out spreading with protected urea, do you calibrate your spinner? What's it like to calibrate, or do you normally do calibrations on your fertilizer spreader?
Well, we do, yeah, but I think it's not massively, not a big change altogether from ordinary urea in the past, that we showed in the past, and the sowing width, we were a wagtail sower and it showed 12 meters, and we don't see all these stripy fields about, like, so it's a good spread with it now.
It's getting a good spread, yeah. I know it will be slightly less of a spread width than can because it's a lighter granule, but that'd be normal with normal urea as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
One, I suppose, Conor, there's a few myths that I want you to expel, I suppose, because there's often, I think, Richard, you touched on it there as well, when any new technology comes on board, it doesn't matter who you are, people will be a little bit in fear of it in case, it affects production or cause a problem on the farm. But there's a couple of questions off come up, Conor, you might help us out. Will protected urea work as fast as can or standard urea?
It will, yep. The short answer, and it will, yep.
I think it was trials in Johnson Castle proved that. I think
trials, yep, they do, yeah. Over that long-term trial in Johnstown Castle, there was a 6-year trial. Yep, it will.
And there is work on Moore Park there as well, I think, as well.
There is, yeah.
These are quick fire questions, so that's fine as well. And dry conditions, traditionally we would have always spread urea in damp conditions. Is it okay to spread in a dry condition?
It is, yeah. The protected urea, again, back to the inhibitor, the coating that's on that product, that'll allow you to spread effectively all year round within the fertilizer season.
I think Patrick Forrestall said to me before, he's a researcher in Johnson Castle, that because like what Richard, you said, it gets wet, it attracts moisture, it's hygroscopic, they call it, that even the dew in the summertime can help melt that nitrogen into the ground and make it safe, which is really beneficial. Big thing in New Zealand years ago, well, it's not years ago, but 10 years ago now, they had issues with nitrification inhibitors, which is different than the urease inhibitor, but it was getting into the food chain, into the milk. Is there any issue with the urease inhibitor NBPT getting into the food chain, Conor?
No, and look, I suppose that's backed up by research and studies carried out too, like within Moore Park, and them studies have shown that there's no traces of that coming into the milk.
Yeah, I think they nearly fed the stuff to the animals to make sure it wasn't. It's regulated by EU anyway and by Ireland. It's commonly used across Europe as far as I know. So they're very strong in that actually, and they're quite happy with that.
That's regulated within the EU, all right, and Irish bodies, like it's regulated, yeah.
Richard, would that have been a concern of yours at the start when you started to hear about it, or had you heard about that thing in New Zealand there 10 years ago?
No, I didn't hear that about New Zealand now, but it's good that there was trials done in this country and that everything's turned out okay. Like,
I think the difference there, I suppose, just to make people very clear on it, was New Zealand, they're effectively spraying the land, I think, with a different type of it's a nitrification inhibitor, and that was getting in, but over time. But in Ireland, the urease inhibitor is the coat to granules, so it's completely different. Yeah, like I said, I think they nearly fed it to the animals. It still wasn't coming out in any of the food or milk, so that's a good sign. Anyone into the soil microbiology, Conor? Does protected urea affect the soil microbiology? I suppose all those bacteria and fungi that cycle our nutrients first, does it do any harm to them?
It doesn't, Cahill. It doesn't. Again, back to the trials in Johnstown Castle that they carried out, it actually showed a positive impact on them soil biological communities. Like,
yeah, that was Duff et al. I think it was a good one. Yeah, and that was a one you would worry about. So that's positive. And last one, not to be annoying you, the lime issue. We're always worried about lime and spreading urea. What can we spread protected urea after liming?
You can, yeah. It's safe to apply to paddocks that have been limed fairly recently, like, within a couple of days after it.
And that's good news for people, because look, Richard, these are all, I suppose, practical questions farmers ask, because when it's one thing about to say to use Protected Urea, but it's another thing when you have to go home and actually start to use it. These are little things you would worry about, I presume.
Yeah, like what you mentioned there about lime and slurry, like that used to be always a problem with the ordinary urea, getting it on at the right time with slurry and all the rest. Where you can go out and spread your slurry, then you can go 10 days or so later then with your Protected Urea, like, and there's no issues for it. You couldn't really do that with ordinary urea.
Last one to finish up, Richard, and it's probably an important one for people. We have an industry across the country who, I suppose, look, we're looking to reduce our nitrogen use, our chemical nitrogen use, and from our discussion today, you are doing that. You're testing your slurry, your grass measuring, I know you're using clover as well, so you're doing everything in your power to reduce your chemical. But to grow the grass for the animals, a certain amount of nitrogen has to be used. And we're hoping the farmers will all convert across the country to Protected Urea, and you have done already and have been for the last 4 to 5 years. Is there any advice, or what would you say to farmers at the moment who are sitting on the fence, who are still using CAN maybe in urea? Would you have any advice to them? That I suppose
go ahead and contact a merchant to see can you get it, and you can either get it 38% with sulfur or 46% without, and try it to see, because you'll find that it works very well, and you'll end up with more money in your back pocket when you're finished, because it's cheaper per unit of nitrogen spread.
So cheaper per unit nitrogen spread. So number one, you're going to save money, and you found that it's had no impact. You're not growing any less grass than you were growing when you were using other nitrogen products.
No less grass grown, no.
Yeah, and I suppose the big thing that I'd be interested, particularly, there's a lot of pressure on both the beef and the dairy industry, is our carbon targets for 2030. I suppose every farmer that starts using Protected Urea, Richard, is probably protecting our agricultural industry going into the future, aren't they?
Yeah, it's a must now going forward, because we like to do something to contribute to get more carbon neutral rather than being forced to do it.
Richard, Conor, really appreciate you joining me on the show today. Look, I think it's important, Rich, for farmers listening to hear somebody that's using it for a long time and how they're getting on with it, and that's not something to be afraid of. And thanks a million for taking the time out, and best of luck with the calving season ahead.
Thank you very much, Cal.
Thanks, Cal. Thank you.
That's it for this episode of the Teagasc Environment Edge podcast. Thanks to Signpost Programme dairy farmer Richard Starrett from Donegal and his Teagasc advisor Conor Maguire for joining us on the show. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. And for more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Cathal Summers. Join us next time for the Teagasc Environment Edge podcast, Signpost to Farm Sustainability.